We have been moving through the gospel according to Luke with much help from Amy Moore, who was our guest preacher during the Lenten season. And so we continue through the gospel of Luke with Luke's account of Easter morning, which may be somewhat different than the Easter story that you are used to hearing on this morning. So listen now for God's word in Luke chapter 24, verses 1 through 12. But on the first day of the week, at early dawn, they came to the tomb, taking the spices they had prepared. They found the stone rolled away from the tomb, but when they went in, they did not find the body. While they were perplexed about this, suddenly 2 men in dazzling clothes stood beside them. The women were terrified, and they bowed their faces to the ground. But the men said to them, "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He is not here, but he has risen. Remember how he told you while he was still in Galilee that the Son of Man must be handed over to sinners and be crucified, and then on the third day rise again?" Then they remembered his words, and returning from the tomb, they told all this to the 11 and to all the rest. Now it was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the other women with them who told this to the apostles. But these words seemed to them like an idle tale, and they did not believe them. But Peter got up, and Peter ran to the tomb. Stooping and looking in, he saw the linen cloths by themselves. Then he went home, amazed at what had happened. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Well, this is a little strange. It's been a while, y'all. As I said at the top, if you haven't been to church in a while, you're not alone. I haven't either. I have been leading worship, an alternative worship service for our youth confirmands as they have been studying to make their public profession of faith today. So happy Easter. Yes, Russell, Danny, Lauren, and Jake are about to publicly claim for themselves or confirm, if you will, the affirmations of faith that were made on their behalf when they were baptized years ago as babies. This is appropriate to do for several reasons on Easter. First, it is in accordance with how things were done way back in the early church. The season of Lent was this time of preparing, this time of study for new believers, of getting ready for Easter. And then on Easter morning, the catechumenates, the new believers, would be baptized. But it's also appropriate on Easter because the story of Easter is the very essence of Christian faith. Christ's death was not the end. After living a life fully devoted to love and service, fully rejecting power and glory, Christ died. However, death, the fear of which is the whole point of pursuing glory and power, was powerless over him. Therefore, we devote our lives to following Christ because he has shown love and servanthood to be the way to eternal, abundant, death-defying life. So with our confirmands, we have crammed a lot of questions and ideas and beliefs into 6 weeks or so. A week or two ago, as I was preparing them to have a conversation with the session so that they could be voted on as full members of the church, I asked them, what they believed about Jesus. One of them gave an answer that I was not expecting, which was that Jesus died twice. Well, for those of you who are not familiar with the Christian faith, that sounds very strange, but once you think about it, you could see why someone might be led to think that. After all, we all know the story of Jesus dying on the cross and then rising from the dead on Easter morning, but Easter morning doesn't explain where Jesus is now. We know Jesus is in heaven along with all our family members, friends, and ancestors who have died and now enjoy eternal life, but everyone in heaven had to die to get there. So if Jesus was walking around on Easter morning, it follows that sometime between now and then, he must have died again. Now, of course, that became a very teachable moment. So we collectively remembered and we went over the Apostles' Creed and we said it together slowly. He was crucified, died, and was buried. He descended to the dead. On the third day, he rose again. He ascended into heaven and is seated at the right hand of God the Father. And so as I was explaining that story of Jesus literally floating up into the sky through the clouds, out of view, I could just see the skepticism and the kids' reaction. He just floated up into the sky. Pastor Alex, are we really supposed to say that with a straight face to the session, that that's what we believe? So I had been ruminating on this for the last week or so when I came across an article in the Christian Century by Ross Allen, a former campus minister, that perfectly articulated what I could not. In his article, The Mystical Significance of Jesus' Resurrection, Allen describes helping college students cope with crises of faith and with challenges to their beliefs from criticism in the humanities and sciences during college. Allen writes, "A common stumbling block was the resurrection of Jesus. For evangelicals in particular, the bodily resurrection is non-negotiable, meaning one must believe Jesus' body was reanimated on the third day after his death, and that he walked around on the earth for a time before ascending through the sky to sit at the right hand of the Father. But this was where things always got hazy. Everybody knows that when you keep going into the sky, you hit the stratosphere and eventually outer space without ever whizzing past a throne room. So where did Jesus fly off to? It seemed everyone was fine demythologizing Christ's ascension. But the natural question which followed set off alarms. If that idea was a metaphor, then wouldn't that mean the resurrection was too? Obviously, this is not the kind of thing you're supposed to talk about when you're a Christian. And especially not when you're a pastor, and especially not on Easter. But turning back to our scripture reading, Luke's account of Easter morning, you'll notice that the physical, living, breathing, reanimated, resurrected body of Jesus never actually makes an appearance. The women go to the tomb. The stone covering the entrance has been moved. There are two gleaming white figures who tell them Jesus has risen just like he said he would, and that they need to go tell the disciples the good news. They do, but the disciples blow them off as delusional women spouting nonsense. How could women be preachers after all? Except Peter decides to do his own research. He goes to the tomb to investigate, finds the stone rolled away, and the only thing inside is the linen cloth where Jesus' body had been. The final sentence of our passage this morning says, "Then he went home amazed at what had happened." Now, sure, if you keep reading, Jesus does make an appearance. First to disciples who are walking together on the road to Emmaus. As they sit down and have a meal with him, he suddenly is revealed to them in the breaking of the bread. And then later to some disciples, he stands in their presence and eats a piece of fish. But again, the story for Easter, prescribed as a lectionary option today, ends with, "Then he went home amazed at what had happened." Only that's not quite right. The version of the Bible that the youth will be presented with in a few minutes translates that verse, as do many versions of the Bible, this way: "Then he went home wondering what had happened." Yes, the word in question in Greek is thaumazo, which means not simply amazed, but lacking understanding, marveling, astonished, bewildered, mystified. One thing that was clear when we concluded the final confirmation class before going in front of the session was that we had only begun to scratch the surface of the questions and ideas of Christian faith in Scripture. We had 6 weeks, but we needed longer. And I rationalized confirming them today with the fact that if an adult says they want to join the church, the session asks them 2 questions after a worship service, and then the next week, ta-da, they're members. They don't have to go through all of that. But we committed to continue having class together. Don't worry, it won't be during worship in the next few weeks. We're going to move it back to the Sunday school hour. We committed to digging deeper. It is a commitment like this that has kept so many faithful saints of Westminster coming back week after week after week. Folks like Bill and Carlene and Dick and Carol. Folks like those who have attended our Sunday school class, so many coming back, digging deeper. Not because they understand or believe all the different ways the story of Jesus' life, death, and resurrection is or not true, but because they are believing into it. To borrow a theme from Amy's Lenten series, believing into it, trying it on, following a path where we don't exactly know where we are going after Jesus by faith, not by sight. We study the Bible and doctrine not to build better arguments and sales pitches for the sake of the church, but to enter more deeply into the mystery and wonder. because there is something life-giving not only about love and service, but about exploring the mystery and depth of our traditions and scriptures. Because the divine power of Jesus' supernatural victory over death can only change our lives if it happened to a natural, real human being who was just as perplexed and as curious as we are. So confirmands, yeah, you guys got to pay attention back there. Let me let you in on a little secret. None of us grown-ups, not even pastors, have figured it out yet. None of us are able to believe this all day, every day, or maybe even most days. We can only believe into it. But the good news is, as I have told you over and over and over again, what matters is not our faith or our ability to believe, but God's grace, God's love, God's justice that is bigger and wider and deeper than anything we can conceive. It is that grace, it is that love that keep these people coming back week after week. That is the faith tradition you were baptized into and that we are confirming now. With this congregation, you share the faith that comes from having felt the power of living into, believing into a family committed to above all else, loving three people. Which three people? God, yourself, and your neighbor. So today, let us proclaim the core of our faith, that somehow, some way, literally, spiritually, mystically, physically, Christ is risen. Alleluia. He is risen indeed. Amen.